said she'd be here, but she was working today,
Okay.
so she's coming right from work, I
Okay.
think.
Okay. So it is, 6:03, we're a couple minutes late here. So we will call the meeting to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alicia, can you do roll call, please?
Yes. Lori Blarden,
Here,
Ian McDonald,
Here.
Matt Puchol,
Here.
Lacey Oster,
Here.
Bruce Blarden,
Here.
Sherry Link,
Here.
and Marge DeLille. Here.
Our district mission, together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions to pathways to create successful futures and positively contribute to our local and global communities. Along with our core values and protocol reminders, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
A second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I have not received any comments for open forum. Mark, have you received anything for open forum?
None.
Okay. So we'll move on to the recognition of our state track participants. Unfortunately, our two participants were not able to make it, but Trent is going to say a little bit about, and we also have cake and celebration, even though they're not here to have it. So we wish they were here, but at least now we can recognize them. And
Now they know for next time.
now they know.
Everybody recognize?
Okay,
Yeah.
Trent.
Coach Brandon Berry, our head coach for track, provided me with a few remarks that he'd like me to read just on behalf of the two state qualifiers. Conrad Webb, who was a sophomore this year, and also Cayman Gebheim, who was a sophomore this year. About Conrad, he wrote, he's a sophomore. He made his first trip down to state track this past season. He qualified in the high jump at the Rice Lake sectional with a jump of 6 feet. This was his personal goal for the season, and it earned him the honor of representing Somerset at the state meet. State was a great experience for him, and he is working hard as we speak to improve to make it back to state next season. Cayman Gebheim is also a sophomore, and Cayman made his second trip down to state this past season. He also made it as a freshman. He again qualified in the discus. With some experience under his belt this year, Cayman was able to make it onto the podium with a fourth place throw of 155 feet and 11 inches. Cayman was very close to making it to state in the shot put as well, and his goal is to be a 2-event state participant next season. I want to thank Coach Berry for submitting those comments ahead of time, and I was actually not able to attend our state send-off for these kids as my wife was being induced later that day, so was not able to be there. But I just want to say how proud I am of our coaches and our kids to get down there, to be down there as sophomores. That's a remarkable honor for both of these young guys, having taught them in middle school and seeing them work all year long. Conrad's a all-conference athlete in soccer as well, so he's had success in multiple sports. Cayman's a 3-sport athlete who has excelled in football, in basketball, and now in track. To make it there and finish 4th as a sophomore is pretty impressive. Both those guys wanted to be here tonight, but Cayman had 7-on-7 for football, and Conrad had the trap banquet tonight. So both guys are very involved kids in our school, so congratulations to them, and look forward to seeing them compete next year.
Awesome. Thanks, Trent,
Thanks,
and
Trent.
congrats to Cayman and Conrad, and we'll have some cake for them. Moving on to reports, we'll start with the listening session summary, which we did have people for our listening session today. Does anyone want to volunteer to give an overview, or do you want me to do that?
I can start and
Okay.
fill in. So just a couple comments, and I think Mark, maybe we can talk about that, the dollars that we talked about last week with the HVAC at the elementary school and the updating those VFDs. It sounds like that's something that we should be addressing, so we don't have to manually do that. It sounds like that would solve some things in those classrooms and in those areas to help control that building a little better for heating and cooling. Also scheduling, so I don't know, Shannon, talking to Tim maybe about scheduling and looking at the days, even though the students are off, when the staff are here, that we still have the same hours set for our heating and cooling system. That seemed to be a little off. But I think too, just adjusting it so that that system works a little better over there, would probably help. And sounds like manually they have to do a lot of those things. We just had some conversation about the wages, and just the increases and the gaps and the percentages and the steps or not giving steps, and how that kind of affected us last time with the gap model that we're at now. They just talked about that one, and then maybe some updates on some of the specialist positions that we have throughout the district, maybe that don't get to be seen at all schools. There's a couple of different, we can talk about it after, I guess, too, but just some of the specialist positions that we have that maybe aren't seen everywhere. And then again, we talked about this sub shortage and then use of sick days with staff, I think was the main topics that were brought up. Just something to keep looking into, obviously the subs, and then using of sick days as and during retirement, I think, or right before retirement. If you have 90 days or you can get up to so many days, staff don't get anything out of it. So something to look into on our end. I think before, wasn't the problem, Lori, that if a bunch of people quit, weren't they saying it could, not bankrupt, but it could be a huge debt? Didn't we have it, or you said we did have it at a time? Some people do have.
Prior to 20.
Sorry.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
I guess we had, I don't know, the
We've
staff that were here
never had-
before
we've
had
never had
a
a-
benefit of some kind for having banked sick days.
If you
But
were
it
hired before
stops.
2006.
So then we stopped it, obviously, for, I'm guessing, financial reasons after 2006.
It had to do with health insurance.
Health insurance, okay. I don't know, maybe something we look into again of why we went away from it, maybe, going forward, and maybe with Dave, he can look at it, and what it would cost, or why we went away with it before. I guess maybe it would be something. Anything else to add? Anything else you
Covered
were
all
here?
the topics, I think. Did he miss anything? You got it all?
All right.
Great, thanks, Chris. Okay, moving on to our superintendent's report. Mark, are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
Hey, speaking of the sick days, about 45 days ago, I wasn't feeling too well. I was thinking about what I'd do with all those days.
Yeah, you have a benefit that our teachers don't.
I don't have anything on the 45. At any rate, just a couple things from my weekend update. Project-wise, Bruce, you had mentioned this. I think, obviously you can probably tell from my weekend update, I'm not very pleased with our ending spot. We always hope that we'd have a little more money to do some things with, and I thought we did. So we're gonna have to whittle that down. So you're gonna have to reprioritize those projects. And I would say that what you mentioned there about the 50 grand putting in the valves and the what have you over at the elementary, I guess that would probably come to the top as a priority, and then see once these numbers get wriggled out. I don't even want to say what we have because I've seen too many of them over the last few weeks, and I think once you get a final readout from Dave, from Johnson, Market Johnson, and Wold, I wouldn't feel comfortable going on with anything else but that one project until you get that. I'm just really leery as far as the numbers that I've seen over the last few months. The other piece, another piece is the survey. They're getting good response to the survey, and again, you should have that back sometime mid-July there, and that's when you've got a lot of heavy work to do, a lot of heavy lifting on that, just to see where you're at and what the community says about the possibility of running that referendum in November, and then that what will be on there. There's a lot of different strategies for that. So I think you're gonna have several meetings in that, maybe a couple additional meetings to get that, or work session, get that figured out. I didn't mention anything in the weekend update about compensation and what you're looking at doing later on in the agenda. I think it's something that's needed, that you have to do, and we've built up a pretty healthy fund balance where you can weather that storm for a year, as I've mentioned several times. But in lieu of doing this, I think you really need to get going on that budgeting process for 23, 24, early in the fall, so you know what your pictures are, and paint out some scenarios as far as if we get this from the state, if we get this from the state, or if we don't. So you're ready to act sometime around the first of the year on what needs to happen for the following year. I wouldn't do this again for a second straight year as far as dipping into the fund balance. But I think, you can weather this storm with what you have, right now. I think that's about it that I have from my report right now.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Questions?
Mark, do you know, who is in charge of mailing out the school perception surveys to the community about the locations that they were sent to?
Well, Alicia would probably know more about that. She was working with whoever they use for the mailing. Alicia, do you know?
So what, asking.
I'm wondering, some people who live in the Star Prairie Township, and everybody who is on the east side of 80th Street in our district is in the Star Prairie Township. And a couple of people who live there have told me that they never got the mailing. And I just wanted to make sure that the Star Prairie Township was included.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
we can definitely check on that and see. Sometimes some of these things went out at different times, I know that, so they may not have all landed at the same time, but we can check on that right away and see.
Yeah, school perceptions kind of took care of all the mailings and things like that. So I can check in with them and see if they can give me like a list or
Okay,
what they did. Yeah.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you about was you were talking about, you would not dip into the fund balance more than 1 year. But whatever we do tonight is going to have an impact on future years, correct?
Definitely, and okay, so was that your question?
I just wanted to make that clear that whatever we approve tonight, it's not like a one-time $800,000 deficit. It's every year moving forward.
Correct. If you don't, with the compensation piece it is, with the other pieces, if you don't straighten out the structural deficit, as far as general fund deficit, whatever that is, if it's, there's multiple things that make that up. If you don't straighten those pieces out, that will compound also. But whatever you put as far as compensation, that's ongoing. So Lori's right on that piece there that, again, that's why I keep saying, you've got a strong fund balance right now, but you really gotta look hard at how that's gonna play out down the road here. And, I'm always looking 2-3 years out into the future of how deficits and money we're getting from the state, how that plays into it, because you'd like to make adjustments as you go rather than some really strong, heavy, hard ones in another year or so, because we got, oops, we didn't get money from the state. So again, I'm just passing on, what I've seen in the past is start early on this, so you know what you have to do for that 23-24 school year. But again, you've got so many pluses coming at you here. The only bad part of it is you don't know what the legislature is going to do. I mean, you're a growing district. That is so, that's so positive that that's going to help you out of a lot of your issues, but you still need the state to come along and that. And Dave's just going to have to paint some scenarios for you. Again, 2-3 scenarios with what ifs, and that way you have it and you know when you make decisions that, hey, here's what's hanging out there. So again, but with our compensation right now, you've got to do this. I mean, it's a sign of the times right here where we're at. We need to pay our people. So.
Okay. Moving on, the financial report is linked to the agenda. Mark, is there anything you wanted to add for that financial report? Dave's or that Dave had wanted to add to that?
No,
Okay. Any discussion with that financial report? Okay, and then also, next is the enrollment report. Anything that you'd like to add that is also linked to the agenda? Mark, anything that you'd like to add to the enrollment report?
no, and again, I just walked into this meeting out of the truck, so I haven't even had a chance to pull up the enrollment chart there, but if it follows our typical, we fluctuate 1 or 2 kids, 3, 4, maybe either way. With that, I'm not expecting any big surprises. If there is, I'll shoot you an email tomorrow.
Yep, no, it looks like everything is pretty similar with the exception of 1 or 2 decreases, increase, so. Okay, any discussion or questions with the enrollment report?
Well, just to note that we've had a net decrease every year for several years, including last year and this year.
Other comments?
Well, one thing I would, with enrollment, the one you really want to keep your eye on is that JK and kindergarten. Because if we're not pulling numbers in there, that always alarms me when, our numbers in JK and kindergarten have gone down steadily. The upward grades in that, so-so, but they've been going down. I think the first year I was there, we had 120 some kids in JK, I believe, could be wrong, but I mean, we're pulling in like 80 now.
80.
So, and these kids stay with us for 13 years, that's a lot of money. And so you really gotta pay attention to those JK kindergarten numbers as they come in. On one hand, but when you graduate 120 kids like this year, you bring in 80 kids, you need to make some adjustments somewhere. Again, I think that's pretty clear, but again, that's the process you need to go through with your enrollments, or excuse me, with your budgeting process.
Anything else with the enrollment report? Okay, and moving on to advanced operations. First, the policy committee. This isn't necessarily anything that needs to be taken care of tonight, but Cherie, Ian, and Matt are currently on our policy committee. And just to make it so there weren't emails or things, we need to get a meeting scheduled for the policy committee to meet. And then Alicia can put out an agenda and get that as well. So if you guys want to do that tonight or however it might go, there are some policies that will need to be on our July working session. So I don't know if you guys would like to kind of chat about that now, if you want to do it on a Monday night, since those are kind of already set aside, and say it just needs to be before our next working session.
We'll find time after this? Okay.
Okay. And then when you 3 have that time, letting Alicia know, because then we'll get it posted and an agenda out for that. And then we'll send on the policies that will need to be looked over the first time you meet. Okay?
Good.
Awesome. And then CISA update. Cherie.
Still getting my feet wet, so this is what I know happened. We had our oath of office to the newly elected Board of Control members, and got a few new ones on, a few familiar faces as well. Ironically, one of my teachers from Unity where I graduated is on there as well, so it's kind of fun to see Mr. Beistel. And he'll always be Mr. Beistel. I will never be able to call him Jim or James because that's not his name. And then we're keeping our monthly meetings to the second Thursday up in Turtle Lake, and I am anxious to learn more about CISA. One of the things that did come up that there was quite a bit of conversation about was vaccinations and masks. So the kids in early childhood are still required to wear masks in every location in the building for the CISA program, and then anyone who is working with these kids, whether it's in home or in the building, are required to be vaccinated and masked the entire time. So there was quite a bit of discussion on that. Apparently there are 23 states that have said, no, we're not going to do this anymore. So there's some, and it's federal funding. So there's, just some questioning of what will continue to happen there. But it sounds like there's been a lot of conversation and, of course, with us new board members, a lot more comments were injected in that. So unfortunately, that's still where that CISA program is at, and hopefully there will be some movement with understanding COVID a little bit better down the road.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Cherie? Okay, moving on, the compensation wage increase. We had some discussion with this during our working session, and Dave was able to get us numbers for, at the end, we had talked about different possibilities during our last meeting of upping for a couple different scenarios, keeping the regular steps and 1.5%, no steps and 3%. And then most recently we were sent, if we did the 3% and then added that lane. So I guess we'll move into discussion regarding the compensation and wage increase. Comments, concerns?
I mean, I agree with Mark when he stated that's something we have to do as a district, as a board, to move forward with it. I'm not comfortable with an $800,000 deficit, and I think we were talking at the listening session beforehand that it's gonna be a district-wide process and budget update next year with Shannon and all the administrators and Dave to come up with, like Mark said, the plan of if we get $500,000 from federal, or, we only get 200,000, I mean, what these all look like, so that the next year when we get this preliminary budget, it's not again 800,000, that it's closer back to what we normally approve, which is on budget or just maybe slightly over. Now, the one question I did have was, are you projecting any positive fund balance this year, Dave? Or is it gonna be another negative, or are you, with the year we're in now?
Well, we budgeted to request reimbursement for federal ESSER funds to the level that we would need to have a balanced budget, essentially. So, looking at expenditure, even through May now, it looks like we're still on budget, not necessarily under, but we have a lot of our biggest year-end things. You and I talked about the open enrollment in and out, like some of those really big things.
So that was that $1 million, so if you look at, if you look at that financial, it was that $1 million that wasn't spent.
Right.
That
Some of those biggest
will
things
be-
hit at the end of the year, and so we're gonna be wrapping all that up really soon, kind of finalizing through July. We'll have our auditors on site, we'll kind of get confirmation of all these things, and then we'll know for sure if this is where we're at and what to expect for the remainder of the ESSER funds, which was our big one.
But, I mean, personally, if we approve this 800,000 deficit, I would hope in Q1 we had an update of where we think the legislature is gonna be, or, hey, these are things that we're looking at adjusting for next year, and then Q2, same thing, because we might know maybe more legislation, so we can have a plan, so we're not doing oh no, we gotta cut 8 people, and that's the only thing we can do because we haven't thought about it, so I would, we're doing this, we're putting you in a poor situation, maybe. Dave, Shannon, welcome to your first year, you're 800,000 in the hole. But I think it's just let's update, let's all work together, let's push for little things that we can think of or outside the box of services, and I know we need our other contracted services, but seeing what we can do there to negotiate something else as well. I mean, they're causing big increases that we didn't expect, kind of out of the blue, maybe. But again, that's something that if we have to look at. reaching out again.
I piggyback with you. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to say, let's go that much into a deficit of over 800,000, but I think you look at two major things right now. You look at the increase of the cost of living and everything going on in gas prices, everything has increased more significantly than we're talking about a 3% raise. And also looking at Somerset compared to neighboring districts, that's my take. I think that we have some amazing staff and teachers, and I think that this is a way that we can at least start making a little chip away to try to get a little bit more comparable to places in the area. And with that, when we talk about, Bruce, as you're saying, moving on some of those deficits, I think one of the things I kind of took a little bit out of the listening session that was in the back of my mind is, you know, being a little creative. I know that this is gonna be possibly people's jobs or higher class sizes, and there's gonna be some give and take. But I think even reaching out to staff and administration, like where are some priorities from our employees that, you know, like, okay, maybe this isn't really of high importance and this really is, and kind of taking some of those pieces into consideration, because I know I've heard from people like with class sizes, so if that's a really major thing, and I mean, I think low class sizes is one of the things that Somerset prides ourselves on, then what are other areas that aren't as high importance to our community and students and staff that we can look at and being creative? But I'm in support of it.
Lacey, just a quick comment here.
Yeah.
You know, 6 years ago, before I took the job here, you failed the referendum, and I was told that we've got a $700,000 deficit that we're looking at. That's why they ran the referendum. And, you know, as we went through that first year, I just can't remember what adjustments we made, but we didn't see that $700,000 negatives. And the reason I'm saying that is there's a lot of pieces to this, and don't think this is gloom and doom by any means what you're doing here, because there's a lot of different tentacles to this that can change very quickly, and you may not be in this situation. But again, I always urge, be prepared for it. And Dave's right, when the audit gets done, what have you, you'll know exactly where you're at, and who knows what's going to happen next fall with the legislature. So I would definitely not paint gloom and doom right now. I would just say, hey, it's a concern. Here's our priority. Here's what we're looking at, and here's our plans if we need them.
Dave, when do you think we'd have the budget for next year, or when do you think we know how much we're
But a lot
getting per
depends
people?
on the state budget process.
When does that usually finalize?
Typically.
I'm sorry, what?
When during the year? Is it December? Is it October?
No, I think they try to be done by June, or like our fiscal year essentially. But if they're battling, it can go longer, but if they're in agreement, it can be done, we might know for sure by March. So it's really a matter of.
Next spring, you're saying?
Yeah, are the legislature and the governor on the same page with what they want to do with the biennial budget?
I'm in support of the wage increase and the steps. I think that while it'll be tough, I think that we're in a good place with our board to get through this. I think it's the one thing we have to do is support our staff. So I'm confident that we will get through it as a board and as new leadership. And I think it's just something that we need to take on right now to maintain our staff and to continue to push forward.
No one's been a stronger advocate for certified staff and support staff than I have. But I'm also fiscally conservative, and I strongly believe that we need to make the step and lane changes to prevent adding to the gap situation that we've already found ourselves in. And I do agree that we need to increase the salary schedule. However, I can't support starting the 22-23 school year with more than $800,000 in deficit spending. Because as I said earlier, whatever we approve tonight, that expense will continue into the future. And I am not optimistic about the state legislature increasing funding to public schools, nor gaining a significant number of students within the next school year that would make up for this amount of deficit spending. So I would make a motion to go with Plan B, where we give the steps and lanes and a 1.5% increase on the schedule at this time. And if things move forward better than what Dave is projecting right now, we can do another increase in the future. So that's my motion.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? So motion fails
Fails.
if there is no second.
Dave, when did you send
The steps,
that? Oh, there it is. Got it.
June 17th.
So what was the difference in that cost? 1.5%?
The 1.5% with
It's
the
a difference
steps
of
was
about
$633,000.
200,000?
So it would put us at about 600,000 deficit spending rather than 800.
2%. Average of. So,
If you second the motion, we can talk about it.
it's like, if you make $56,000, or it's like $800 difference. If you make 60,000, it's $900 on a check for the year. That was 1.5%.
Plus the percent that they get from the staff.
I'm just saying it'd be less, so
Oh,
so you,
well,
yeah,
yeah,
you'd get,
it's less.
or, yeah, so instead of the 3%, you'd get $900 more if we went with the 3% in the step, instead of the 1.5 in the step. So,
Are you seconding it?
no,
Or were you
I'm not, I'm
discussing?
just,
Okay.
I was just working through the numbers, what the cost per person is,
Okay.
right, is that right? Is my math right? This is like fourth grade math, so I should.
We're on science here. And it's.
Well, I'll make a motion, and I would like, before I make a motion, can we link something to the agenda, Dave, maybe those options, because you said option B.
I called it
Right.
option B because it was a second in the
Yeah,
list.
it wasn't really,
I don't know, just, I mean, maybe link
That
it
was
to the
before that.
agenda so that people know.
You refer to the, what he gave us
it was
2 weeks
the,
last
and
time,
actually, we
yeah.
didn't get, maybe.
We didn't get a sheet, we just had
hard
an
copy.
email
That
from
was the
Dave.
sheet. I think this was hard copy
It
app,
was just a
but this
handout.
didn't have.
So I guess maybe I'll make a motion to increase the salary schedule by 3% and add, provide step and increase the salary schedule by 3%. Is that? Okay.
Is
That's
there
my
a
motion.
a
Second.
second to that motion?
Second.
Matt seconds. Discussion with that.
So our policy says we're gonna be between 15 and 25% of our budget. Right now, we're at 20%. This will bring us down to 15.6%.
Mhm. So, what does our policy say if we go below 15%?
You're thrown in, go directly to jail.
So then I will not run next year.
Well, we'll all visit you.
Oh, you blame the old superintendent.
I think, we're doing this, we're putting our district in this situation as a board. So I think it's on us too, to work with you, Shannon, Dave, staff, to make this happen. I think you're worth it, I think the staff is worth it. I agree, Lori, I don't like it either, but I don't want anybody else to leave and go somewhere else because they are getting more percentages other places, and we gotta somehow find a way to.
Did you ever get any more information from McGrath about how we
Yeah.
compare?
Jody and I both did communicate with her, and she said she's gotten some data back. She's waiting on data from some other districts. And we also sent her a bunch of the information for our people, specifically for her to update her process. So, like I said last time, it was just this complete shutdown for a few months, but now she's going through her process.
So right now, do we really even know how we compare with other districts?
Well, I think it's pretty well known that we're below districts around us. I mean, I don't think, that's been talked from a lot of people. I mean, teachers are leaving us that have been here for over 20 years. We have very low applications for when we do have positions open.
Everybody does. And that one example you're talking about, my understanding is that district just passed an operational referendum and put all that money on the salary schedule. So that's a new increase for that particular district. And I haven't called that district to ask them, but that's what I've heard. So my information might not be accurate, and that's why I'm asking for some accurate information.
So I'll just piggyback off what Bruce said. Again, this is a super tough decision for me. I am a very financially conservative person. But when I look at our current circumstances and I look at a $600,000 deficit, or do we go a little bit more in order to support the staff? Because either way, we have to work at this, and there's no solid answer here that everything's gonna be okay next year. So no matter what happens, we have to work at it. And I lean towards go for the 3%, continue the steps, to truly send as best a message we can to our staff that says we support you, we're behind you. I am here committed to figuring this out because we can't do this again next year. I don't support just spending money to spend it. But when I look at what's our staff doing, who's considering leaving, and is there any way we can entice them to stay, because I do value them. That's why I lean towards going with Bruce's motion and the 3%. As tough as it is for me to even say that I support going into a deficit, I feel like it is the right decision for me to make tonight.
You go back to that 200,000. Yes, it increases, like you pointed out last time, increases our deficit by 30%, but our overall budget, it is 1% of the budget of our whole district. On $20 million, it's 1%. To add that, to our staff, which I think is, we gotta be able to find 1% of $20 million. That's my.
Well, I keep going to inflation. I mean, just I think all of those steps and those pay schedules were made at a time when our average inflation is 2 to 3%. And that's not the case right now.
Lacey, a quick comment here.
Yeah.
Up until 2 years ago, this just, from my conversations with superintendents from the area, just some takeaways here. Up to 2 years ago, I believe we were sitting fairly well as far as in the MVC, as far as compensation. But this whole world's gone upside down in the last couple of years. And one of the reasons that I was pushing for McGrath's study is to find out what these districts are doing, because all of a sudden we started seeing all these bonuses and different special situations of compensation. And that's why some of our people have been leaving. Well, now, fast forward to just this spring, I would say the average, what people are putting on their schedules are 3 to 5%, somewhere in there. So, it'd be really nice to have Victoria's golden tiers exactly what's happening. But again, I think our general pay was good up until 2 years ago. But now it's, like, I would hate to, just from my conversation, say this is exactly where we stand right now. And I'm sure there's some areas in our schedule we do fairly well, and there's some that really need some catching up.
Any other discussion? So right now, there's a motion on the table to add 3% on schedules and include the steps, include moving in step as would regularly happen.
I just want to make one more comment so that it's on the record. We talked about this in the listening session, but this does mean that if we may be looking at cutting staff in the future. I just want to make sure that is on the record.
Okay, all in favor? Do we want to go around for this one since there's the discussion?
Sure.
Okay. Marge?
Okay.
Sheree?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
I am yes. Matt?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
No,
Lori? Okay, so motion carries 6-1. Okay, moving on, our 22-23 preliminary budget, and recommending that that we approve the 22-23 preliminary budget as presented. That is linked within our agenda. Dave, do you have anything you want to add to that as?
No, I would just emphasize again what I said last meeting, where this is a snapshot. It's a step in our process. Right now, we did just approve the compensation, and we'll work on immediate implementation for that. That's built into this preliminary budget. But all these numbers, we're gonna refine them as we continue to get more information. Our next big update to the public is at our annual meeting and budget hearing in September. But we'll be discussing these things as we go. And then final approval of the original budget for the next year happens at the end of October. And anytime after that, if we need to, we can amend the budget. If something new comes to light, some new information, something we want to change, we can amend the budget during the year as well. So it's a constantly evolving process for us, and this is one step.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the 22-23 preliminary budget.
I will second.
Any discussion?
I guess I would just ask that we are looking at it over the summer even our 22-23 to look at anything that we can adjust. Yeah, we're approving our preliminary budget, but is there anything in there as we meet with staff and the school and stuff over the summer that we can look to squeeze in that before October or September that we already look? Thanks, Dave.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to consenting agenda. Is there a motion to, there's several minutes that were linked on from previous sessions. We got a little bit behind, but we're gonna get caught up and get back on a regular schedule with that. So is there a motion to approve the minutes that are listed?
Make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is our board bill, that's also linked. Is there a motion, or if anyone wants to put all of them in one?
I'll make a motion to approve 6B, 1C, 1 and 2, D, 1 and 2, E1, F1, and G1.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
All in favor, or any discussion? Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So next, our July work session is July 11th, and then the July 25th is our regular session, and we will continue with the listening session 30 minutes prior.
Thank you for coming, because
Yes,
that,
thank you.
and for people like watching, listening, like that's time for us too, that we don't go home And we just come right from work here, so I appreciate you coming in because then it makes me feel like I'm actually using my time wisely and appropriately instead of sitting here doing nothing when I could be at home, so.
He
thank
really
you.
likes the rest of us board members, but apparently that one
Right,
of
no,
them.
thank you for coming using that, appreciate it.
At our June 13th meeting, we approved several construction items. And in the weekend update, we were told that we should hold off on that. Do we need to make a motion to table those construction projects at this time? Mark, do you have an opinion on that?
I would just leave it go until we get a good solid number, but I do think you need to reprioritize and, what those, what those projects are. The fence is a no-brainer, that has to go. We work with the city on that, and they want that in there. Again, for my money, I would do the valves and the 50,000 of the elementary, but I would really hold off until we know exactly, I'm a little protective of that whole construction thing, because from day one it was, we're not gonna overspend this budget, and we've done very well so far. And we can wait until we get good solid numbers.
Is there a date or time that we could get those solid numbers?
Well, that would be up to Dave, and as soon as he gets reinsurance from, so we know for sure from Market Johnson, well, I just don't wanna see any more bills come through from them.
So at the June 13th meeting, we approved the HVAC upgrades at the elementary school, the pond fence, the elementary playground, and the PA system at the high school gym. So at this time, those are tabled except for the pond fence.
Correct.
You say move forward with the HVAC?
I think we should, but I think maybe Dave, could you shoot us an update in the work session in July? And see where Mark and Johnson's at. Knowing I know them, they're not gonna spend or bid out any of this stuff, knowing that we don't have the referendum money to cover it. Shannon, don't think they would. They're not that tight.
I agree.
So,
It just looked like, based on his last numbers he gave this weekend was,
120, but
what's that?
I think we got 100.
Right, so even if we did the HVAC in the pond, we're still, that would be safe. I just think the HVAC, if we get going on it, because that could be 6 months out. As long as those numbers look like it's gonna work.
From what I heard, these are 13 months out, so, and maybe.
So you're saying that we should move forward with the HVAC upgrades at the elementary school and just table the playground and the PA system?
Yes.
I've seen numbers change really quick.
Yeah,
As long as those
One work
numbers are
order
solid.
comes through or something.
Yeah, I don't know, I'd really like Market Johnson to give us a more solid update. If it got cut in half, in this 2 weeks, yeah. I just got $50,000 in changes over the last 2 weeks that were old, so I'd like to wait from them to close it all.
So when do we wait until?
We can put it on the next.
I'd like to hear on the work
agenda.
session.
And you think you'll know that by then?
Or
Mark
some
and I
updated.
both have been trying to get the final answer from them, and we had a group email with the leads from Wold and Mark and Johnson, and Mark and I, and they indicated that they're all done. These are the final invoices that they have at all, and so if that's the case, we're around 130,000. And I think we were explicit, is there anything else? Are you done? Is this to close? Is this final? And they said it was.
So,
We can rely on that.
That's in writing.
Well, it's via email, so that counts.
for them, yeah, it does.
So
So do we?
are you saying it would be safe to move forward with at least the elementary HVAC?
Yeah, and I think if you were to even prioritize your projects and then say, Shannon, proceed as you can, with ensuring that you're not going over, I think we could try to get things moving.
Well, then let's ask them to bid that out, or get a price on
I
it.
think Mark's plan was that we do it ourselves and do RFPs as necessary,
Okay.
which is fine with us. I think his thought was we would save that cost of them running it. But if there's a preference by the board to do it a different way, we can do that.
I think we go through it, let's get the RFP for that at least, and then see if it comes in at 50 or 100, and then we'll know the next one we can do. I think
We know
that's
we're
priority
safe
number
for
one.
that project.
Yep, and then that one's done, and then we
With
grab
the
item
two
two.
projects, the fence and HVAC.
If they're good with the numbers, they said it in an email, then if they're over, they'll cover it. Right?
So we don't need to make a motion since that already carried the last time, right? We can
Correct.
just go ahead and go forward with that.
This
Okay.
won't-
So as long as I was already talking, can I say my other thing for once we're on the table?
Yes, go ahead.
is,
Well, you did start the last time.
The
No.
liaison officer report. There was a time when we would get a report quarterly, and we haven't gotten one. Probably, I don't even remember if we've had one at all this year. Maybe at the beginning of the year.
I think we got one.
So if we could get a report from the liaison officer for our next work session to see how the year went, that would be good. I think the school district pays more than $50,000 for that.
If I just make a comment on that, Shannon, you said in your weekend update, you're gonna talk about that, was that next month?
At the next meeting.
You'll talk about-
I've got kind of a significant update of, to maybe help answer your question as to why there hasn't been an update, and then kind of the plan moving forward with readdressing some gaps that kind of popped up this year that,
We'll have an opportunity to weigh in?
yes,
Perfect.
And we'll put that on.
Before any contract is signed?
correct. I'm bringing you a draft contract.
Perfect.
Mhm. Yep.
Lori, anything else?
No, thank you.
Ian?
No.
Matt?
Just a couple things. I want to say thank you to Mark. This is his last meeting with us, so thank you, Mark, for everything you've done for us, especially at least in my time on the board. Welcome, and best of luck to you going forward. And then the last thing, just regarding summer school, I just want to say thank you to all of our staff that is part of that. You know, I've got 3 kids that we take advantage of summer school, and it's been a really good experience this year. So to any staff listening or here, thank you very much. And just, you know, of note, not that I'm kind of elevating it, but Miss Erickson put on a play with some of the kids, and my daughter was in it, and we knew nothing about it. She brought home no lines, she gave us no information, and she absolutely rocked it. We were so surprised when we went and watched that last week. Miss Erickson did a fantastic job putting it together, and it really highlights kind of the area of drama in our school that I watched this production that was put on in the middle school in that flex space, and I'm thinking, man, if we had an auditorium, holy cow. So I was really blown away by that production. So thank you to all the staff, and thank you to her for doing that.
I will kind of echo, Mark, thank you, this is your last meeting, so it's been great working with you for the time that you have, and I look forward to moving forward with Shannon as our new superintendent. I want to thank the teachers that came to the listening session. Again, kind of reiterate what Bruce said, it's other times, so thank you, and it's nice to hear voices, and we are here to listen. So, and then a shout out to Cayman and Conrad while we eat your cake after we're done. Bruce.
Yep. Same thing Matt and Lacey said with Mark. Thank you, Mark. Congratulations. Good luck. Next couple months, staying busy. And then what time are our meetings? Are they 6 o'clock going forward?
Yes,
They are all at 6?
yes.
Okay. That's it.
Echoing as well, Mark, you have impacted a lot of kids' lives with the districts that you've worked in, and we're grateful that you were here, and probably not as grateful as you to end your career at the greatest school district in the world. So thank you for all that you've done, and Shannon, we look forward to working with you as well, and we've got a lot of fun things coming up and a lot of good challenging things coming up, and it would be great to work together on finding solutions to all of it.
Marge?
I just want to clarify on some of the comments I made at the last meeting about the employee handbook. I went back and reviewed it, and it's vacancies or new jobs that should be posted. And it's the administrator's responsibility to make sure that the rules are followed in the employee handbook. How do you expect the teachers to sign it or the staff to sign it if we're not gonna follow it? The second thing is I wanna know more about the reading specialist. I want to know how it's been going. I think they've been here a year now. How's she doing with the students? Any changes in reading skills, or does she have direct contact with the students? Those are all things that we should know and I've been asked about. So that's it. So I'd like to know more about that. And I know that my comments weren't in the last minutes, so I'm saying them once around the table so that they get in there. Okay.
Okay, we now will take a motion to move into closed session. I do want to say before we do that, we do have cake, so maybe we can take a motion to move into closed session and cut cake, and if people want to take any cake before we go into closed session. And
Take your piece of cake. You
and
deserve it.
Take your cake and eat
You've
it
been here an
too.
hour and a half.
Some might call it dinner, depending upon what
So do
time
you
you
want
got
to make a
here.
motion to move in? I'll make a motion to move into closed session pursuant of Wisconsin statute 19.181C for consideration of employment, promotion, and compensation for performance evaluation data of any public employee over the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now enter into closed session.
With a brief pause.
With a brief